All right, I think we're on episode 10, Pest Control Millionaire. Today, we have a super awesome guest, Chase Coates, one of my good friends, an absolute boss for sure. He runs a $10 million plus company. He's got Outback Landscape, as you see in his shirt. He's got Lawn Buddies. He's got Lawn Phone, and a couple other cool things we'll be talking about. So welcome to the podcast, Chase. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So you've been in the industry a super long time, like from high school, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
How did you get into the industry to begin with? I know your father probably plays a big part in that, right?
Yeah. So I kind of grew up in it. I've been in it almost my whole life. My dad had a landscape company for 20 years in Phoenix, and they were also a power equipment distributor, Walker lawnmowers. Had a distributorship in Idaho, and so I used to go to work with him every day when I was 3-4 years old. I just go ride around the truck with him. If he ever left me at home, I'd get upset, and so he'd have to come back and get me. So I just ride around with him, go to work, go check on crews, and so I just grew up around it. We ended up moving to Idaho, and when I was in junior high, kind of end of middle school, junior high, I started just mowing lawns, knocking on doors, mowing lawns in the neighborhood, stuff like that.
That's super cool. So, I mean, you can't see the facility in the picture, but I actually know which room you're in because I've been there. And you just built that 2 years ago? It's been longer than that, maybe now?
We moved into this facility in February of 2019, and we had a really light winter that year. So we moved in, had like 2 weeks to move in, and then we were on the field working. So it was a quick transition. It was good though. Yeah,
I just bring that up because I can see the background. And one thing I will say about Chase is that he's kind of a quiet guy, but I will say that when he talks, the whole room stops what they're doing and they listen. So I'd just say be prepared to keep your ears open on this one. Take some notes because he's going to throw some fire out there. But Chase, when you first started mowing lawns and you just got into the business, like what did your dad sell and then you started just mowing lawns, or did your dad have a company? You had a company side by side? What did that look like?
So he had the distributorship while I had the landscape company in Phoenix. They wanted to move back to Idaho, where both of my parents were from. That was the territory they had for the distributorship for Walker. And so he sold the landscape company, moved back home. The reason he didn't start landscaping here is because he didn't want to compete against who he sold to. He didn't want to be a supplier who was also competing against the people that he was trying to sell power equipment to. Even though they had dealers, all just not what he wanted to do. And so I worked for them a little bit. I'm still involved somewhat there, but on a day-to-day basis, I'm not. And so I started mowing lawns just to make extra money. Mostly, I think it was just because I wanted to do my own thing and didn't like other people telling me what to do. So I started mowing lawns in the neighborhood first. And then once I got my driver's license and I was old enough, started like cold calling like apartment complexes and wherever I could find. At the time, the demographic was probably who had the most grass, and you would just call them, right? Thinking they were the best customer. So I just did that like during lunch break at school, like even in high school, I would go get lunch, like fast food or something. And I would just sit in my truck and like cold call people on a list. And then after school, I'd go look at them, do bids, put them together and send them to them that night. So that's how I sort of got started. Me and a buddy, we would go mow after school until dark and then all day Saturday. So I don't know how we actually fit that much mowing in like during school, but somehow we did. So
did you use Walker mowers from day one?
We did. I didn't want to get kicked out of my family, so I had to.
Yeah, you have a whole fleet of them, that's for sure.
No, they're great. They're awesome. So
when did you, so you never even actually went out and got a real job ever? Like the 9 to 5 cliche job?
I've never worked for anybody my entire life other than my parents.
God, that's so awesome.
I look at people ask me questions. I remember early on, people ask me questions. They're filling out like a W-4. I'm like, I don't know. I've never filled it out myself.
Chase, what's your resume look like?
Yeah, I've never had a resume.
That's pretty impressive. So then it was just you and a buddy, right?
me and a buddy started mowing lawns. He was awesome. We made a game out of it. Like and honestly, like this is how you have to do it. And it's the most efficient way to run, but you've got to get excited about it. So we were in high school. Like, I don't know how I'm not like 500 pounds with like raging diabetes, but like it was like right when Krispy Kreme got big, we would go get 12 Krispy Kreme donuts and like, I swear a gallon of milk on like a Saturday morning and go mow lawns. It was like the most disgusting thing ever. Like, I can't even imagine doing this now. And we would pull up to a property though, and it'd be like 12:59, and we're like, all right, we're going to wait till 1:00. We're like, okay, we got this done. We finished it in 40 minutes last week. We're going to do it in 35 minutes. So by 1:35, we're back in the truck. And we put a plan together. We're like, all right, you're going to start trimming on that side. I'm going to start edging. When we're both done, we're going to both mow. Who finishes first grabs a blower, and we'd meet in the middle. So we had this HOA we would do, this cul-de-sac. And so we would like plan out, like, I always trim walking backwards. I was way faster. So I'd start on the right side so I could go backwards and finish over by the truck. So we planned this whole thing out, and then we jump out of the truck at 1, and then we try and beat our time every week. Like, we try and get it down, like not do a bad job, but like, what can we do to be as efficient as we possibly can? So we're back in the truck, and we get back in, shut the doors. We're like, turn the truck on. We're like, it's 1:34. Sweet. We beat it.
So you guys are creating system and processes before you even knew it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We had no idea what we were doing. It was just fun to us. Yeah. And we were trying to be efficient, but, it, taught me a lot of good habits though. Like, cause you didn't want to go back. And the most annoying thing was like, you get in the truck, you shut the door, and you're like, oh, dang it, we forgot to trim that house or something. And it would ruin the whole thing. So we got really good at being really efficient and thinking through like the best way to go do a property. And we did that for years.
I'm sure you still do that today, right?
Oh yeah, but it was fun. And that's kind of the hard part about having employees too, because you're just like, man, this could be so much more fun than what you're thinking this is, you know?
Yeah.
Have you just continuous improvement?
Have you ever thought about gamifying it for them in a way? Have you guys done that in the past? I'm sure you have of some sort, right?
Yeah, no, we try. We do things. We have not done pay for performance at all. And we've got it really close. Like, I want to run it with the test crew first and make it more of an elevated thing. Like, if you get advanced to this is how you get a pay raise. You get on the pay for performance plan. Yeah. We just haven't done it yet. I know a lot of people are doing it. A lot of people talk about it. Just got to make sure you do it the right way.
For sure. Okay, so now you and your buddy are out mowing lawns, just having fun. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think like you were a high school kid on lunch, cold calling customers. Like, that's just wild to me, but just goes to show what you've done today and why. And I just think it didn't come easy for anyone. So you got 2 kids mowing some lawns, but then the hardest part is transitioning from getting out of that truck into, hiring the next crew and then to overseeing the crew. Like, how did you make that adjustment? You had your dad there, so which is super helpful. Yeah. But walk me through that process.
Man.
But take you way back.
So mowing lawns, graduated high school. I was doing, I don't know, probably $250,000 a year in maintenance my senior year of high school, maybe 280, something like that. And I was like, well, college doesn't sound that fun. I started taking some online classes and took like 2 credits. And I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done in my entire life. This is horrific. So I stopped doing that completely. That was a total waste of money. And I was like, I'm just going to go all in on this. And as far as getting out of the truck, I think I sort of did it by accident. So when I was graduating high school, I hired one of my first higher level employees. I hired a guy who had just graduated with a bachelor's degree in design build from a landscape program at a local college. And he got out of school a couple of weeks before I did my senior year. So I sold some projects, sold some hardscape jobs, and lined some things up for him. And so I basically scheduled him out, and he would go work and do stuff while I was still in school. And so it sort of kind of forced me to like think about, all right, what's this guy going to go do? And I'm not going to be there for it. And how's that going to work out? So probably from the very beginning, just by default, I started doing that because of him. And I didn't have the skill set at the time for design, build work or hardscapes, putting in irrigation systems. So I leaned on him pretty heavy that first year, doing stuff because he'd already worked for people and done an internship and things. And this sounds like we were totally winging it here, but
we usually are.
And that's sort of how I did it. Yeah. We started knocking on doors, and we did a few postcards, a few door hangers, but it was, mostly just knocking on doors. And I would drive to big neighborhoods, people that didn't have landscapes in yet, early in the year, kind of right before the snow melted. And I remember I knocked on this door and I was like, hey, are you guys planning on landscaping your yard? And the lady kind of looked at me and she's like, well, what do you think? You were just going to leave it like this? And I was like, oh, all right. Yep, here's my business card. I was like, never going to hear from most people. So like a month later, they call and they're like, hey, you knocked on our door. We're ready to have our yard put in. Come take a look at it. And it was, this was probably $100,000 project. I was 18 years old. So the year I graduated high school, we sold a $100,000 job knocking on doors. And they actually turned out to be like one of the best clients I've ever had. So that was 2005 or 2006. And they just sold their house and moved. And we were still maintaining it up until this spring.
That was my next question was going to be, do you have any of those clients left from the high school days?
One. I have one. Yep.
That's pretty impressive.
So it'd be like our, I don't know, 16th season or something, 17th season. We, up until the last couple of years, we had a few people move away, but we were still doing 4 or 5 that were, from high school. Kind of wild.
Yeah. So in that same time period, were you doing snow as well? Had you started snow or you were just doing lawns?
We were doing snow. We were just doing a little bit of like residential driveways and stuff. Nothing crazy. Nothing that had like a time constraint on it.
The good old days.
Yeah. And then we started doing a little bit more snow removal. And once the construction side grew, it's the same thing. You're in a snow area. What do you do with all your big equipment in the winter? And you want to keep competitors off your properties, right? Yeah. You don't want other landscapers in there plowing them. So we started getting heavy into snow. On the snow side though, just big commercial, anywhere we can do de-icer, anywhere they care about liability. We'll do residential snow if it's part of a contract and they're an existing customer, but we will not sell residential snow in and of itself. If
I remember, for the residential snow, don't you use the walkers there too?
We do. We have a couple of vans, some transit vans that we use for irrigation, and we got some aluminum ramps in them. So in the winter, we put the ramps in, and then we actually just back the walkers right into them, and we turn those into sidewalk crews. So they're not pulling trailers. They can put ice melt through the side door, and they can pull the walker in and out of the van. Works awesome.
Yeah, that's super awesome. And then what year did you start doing like the weed and fur and pest?
So we've always kind of done a little bit of spraying, a little bit of pest control, not a lot. It was really just for our existing clients. And in 2019, we bought Lawn Buddies from a friend of mine. He'd been in business a long time too and had a good reputation. A lot of people liked him. He was just ready to go do something different. And so we closed on that in the fall of 2019 and brought that in. And the goal was to really push the chemical side. And kind of what we've done with Lawn Buddies is, so Lawn Buddies is branded totally separate from Outback, for people that don't know. And there's pros and cons to running 2 different brands in one market, for sure. One of them being software, billing, invoice templates, all that boring stuff. People calling and price checking you and then calling the exact same phone line and getting another price quote, and that awkward conversation of like, yeah, you did just talk to me. Same company.
I know that feeling all too well.
Yeah. Different manager though that runs it. We've kind of siloed our people a little bit on the org chart. So like the guy who runs Lawn Buddies and runs the chemicals in charge of all the chemical across everything. So one guy's responsible for all of it. We don't want a bunch of hands in something like that can get a little sideways quick. You want to control who's mixing, who's doing the planning, who's doing everything, application rates. So we keep a pretty tight lid on that so that there's very, very few mistakes ever. But running 2 different brands in one market, It's been good. We originally did it so we could expand Lawn Buddies to other markets. If I wanted to go into other markets, I did not want to take design build there and heavy construction first. So we figured it's a light footprint. It's easy to get in. So first thing we did was rebrand the logo. It's like a similar shape, totally different logo. But if you were to look at the two, like the old logo and this one side by side, you can see it almost looks like a V2 of it. Developed a character and something we could brand with. We wanted something that was cute, something that looked good, something that wasn't aggressive. I wanted someone who's a 40-year-old stay at home to look at it and be like, that's a cute logo. I like it. We're going to call them. It's got to be friendly. All of our guys wanted like black trucks, and I'm like, no, we're going blue. So we tried to create something fun, something friendly, something that was marketable. And then the other part of it too is we wanted to take it and offer it as a premium service. So with Lawn Buddies, we don't let anyone become a customer unless they have a card on file. We will not take checks. So card on file, or they don't go on the skid. As annoying as, chasing $40 is for a year. I mean, people are busy, but people use their cards for everything. Amazon, Netflix, you name it. So it's easier for them. It's easier for us. They don't get a huge bill. It's just a better process. So we require a card on file, and they have to also take our full program. Meaning if you want the lawn that you want it to look good, you care about your property, this is the program for our area that we run. And we don't let people skip. Now, if someone's doing construction or something's going on, obviously we work with them.
Yeah, but when you bought Lawn Buddies, it wasn't set up that way. You had a couple different programs, right?
Yeah, they had multiple different programs.
And you just streamlined and said, this is the one you're going to go with.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how in depth you want to get or how boring you want this to be, but
I think it's super helpful for a lot of people out there that are listening that are probably going through this similar thing right now. Like they have 5 different packages, right? And it's just hard to wrap your head around. You're jumping all over the place. It doesn't make sense. The revenue's offsets in different months. So you basically took your clients and said, this is a program we have, and you're either going to come with us or not, whether they dropped you or went somewhere else.
I waited too long to do it, probably because I was nervous. And I'll give you the quick rundown of it and just give you all the detail. So with all the facts all the data that I can remember. So we took it over, finished out the year. The idea was, I don't want anyone to know that we bought this right now. There's no reason to go make a big whatever.
Yep.
Makes you feel good, I guess, but it doesn't benefit the customer at all. So we finished the year strong. We just said, all right, keep doing what you're doing. Finish the year. Second year, we were too slow to raise prices in 20. We didn't want to lose a ton of people, but basically anyone could. There were people that were on a list for 1 application a year, 2 apps a year, 3 apps a year, 4 apps a year, 5. The curve that we had originally, and these are fake numbers, but just to make for easy math, app 1 had 600 clients on it. App 2 has 1,200. Well, your second application is time specific because of weeds. You've got a certain window you need to hit there. So you've got customers that are spending, 4, 5, 6 apps with you, and you're late getting there to treat their weeds because you're out taking care of some client that only ever has you treat the weeds because that's the only thing they want done. You're not providing a good service to the people who are spending the most money to you. So it dilutes your quality, it dilutes your service, and you can't staff for that. How do you double your business for 4 weeks and then crash back down to 600 for the third app? It just doesn't work. You can't staff for it. It's not consistent. I don't care what anyone says. Your turf quality is way worse when you do that. You're just treating symptoms at that point, and you're not taking care of the problem. And the real problem is consistency. Any one of our lawns that are on a full program, you could stop treating them probably for a year and they would still look better than most of the lawns around them. You build up that residual, you condition the lawn, you condition the soil, and it's a way better product. So that second year, we raised some prices and we said, okay, anybody who is 1 treatment or less, we're just telling them we don't do that anymore. I think it was 1 or 2 treatments. And we just said, look, we're going to a full package. You've got to be at least 4 treatments or more. And we dropped probably 250 clients And that accounted for, I think, a whopping $15,000 a year in revenue out of 250 clients. I mean, it wasn't even noticeable. And those were all ones that you can never get paid on. You're always chasing, the story. So that second year we were a lot more aggressive. And we just said, okay, you're going to take our full package. We're doing an insecticide and we're going to include that, with our second app. And you're taking it because everyone gets upset when they find out they have grubs. They can't treat them. It's going to look terrible. Plus they have to treat them the next year again too, because you can't get total control the first year once you already have them.
Yep.
So we just got aggressive with it and raised our prices to where we should have been. We had a local company that was here and they were going around knocking on doors, telling people that we had raised our prices 3%. And they couldn't believe it. We were ripping everyone off. And 3 weeks later, the Russia-Ukraine thing happened and fuel prices went through the roof. Fertilizer costs went through the roof. And we saw all this coming. So we stuck to our prices. We raised them. And I think they were even offering like a 2-year lock. Like, hey, if you'll sign up with us, we'll lock your price for 2 years because these guys are ripping you off. I have no idea how that worked out for them, but I'm sure it didn't. But business is just math. It's just simple numbers. You can't be upside down all the time. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not good for you. It's not good for your employees.
Not good for your customer.
It's not good for your customer. And I have a hard time believing that any valuable customer and anyone who is a decent person wants you to lose money and be unsuccessful. So we just said, look, this is our full program, 6 applications, one being insecticide. It's the most efficient way to do it. We get better control. We're treating weeds the same time we're fertilizing. And we run both a liquid and a dry program. And man, our complaints, our callbacks dropped to 1 to 2%. I mean, almost nothing. Like better customer experience, everything. So our callbacks are way better.
I have a question for you.
It's a lot better way to go.
So you said you lost 250 clients. It's about $15,000 in revenue. You raised prices at the end of the year with those same clients. I'm assuming you made more money with that same clients.
Way more money. So we raised prices and we basically just said, okay, here's our rate matrix. This is where everybody needs to be. So we didn't look at the list and say, well, this person's been a customer for 14 years. We've got to be nice to her. We got to do this. Man, we raised prices. We had people that made fun of us. We had people that were like, wow, you guys haven't raised my price in 10 years. I couldn't believe you haven't done this sooner. Like I was just for it. Every year I was like, this is going to be the year. Nope. No price increase. Like people openly made fun of us. I was like, wow, amazing.
Yeah. On the other side, you didn't want to do it because you were scared, like you said.
Yeah. And one of the things that one of our friends has always said, Jonathan,
yep.
Price increases almost always go better than you think they will. 100% true. And I'm not talking about ripping people off or taking advantage of anybody. I'm talking about pricing your service where it needs to be able to make a decent profit.
Yeah, we're not out there to do it for free, right?
Always go better than you think it will. Man, we had people in our own office, people look at that list and they're like, there's no way we're going to lose all our customers. Nobody's going to sign back up. So by customer count, we dropped 250 and then raised prices where they should have been. And we added back and back sold another, call it 300 clients, 400 clients. Our revenue grew. We've almost doubled that business in 32 months.
That's incredible.
From where it was, more than doubled that business. We have the same customer account from when we started.
That's incredible.
So our client count, number of clients is the exact same now because we've been dropping off clients, refilling it. So our revenue is almost double with the same customer count by address.
Yeah, that's impressive. And then didn't you start a second Lawn Buddies in another market? Did you end up doing that?
We did. We started another Lawn Buddies branch in Boise, in Meridian, and that's been going well. It's moving slower than I'd like it to. Some of that is self-inflicted, just because during COVID and everything going on here, we've been growing like crazy here too. And staffing is an issue. So that's my excuse, but it is growing. It's growing well. And we're growing it from the start, the same way that we did the others, with the transition at Lawn Buddies. So same thing, same rules. This is our package. This is how it works. This is our program. It's not complicated for people. Like, this is how you sign up and this is what you get. And they're doing a great job with it.
That's awesome. So, but I mean, you've built a pretty good sized business in such a small market.
We're not in a huge market now.
You said, I think it's 75,000.
Yeah, we're probably around 75,000. There's probably 120, maybe 125,000 people in a 35, 40 mile radius.
Yeah.
It's pretty spread out.
What's your mix of revenue from services? Not specific numbers, but just like.
Our mix is, we're about 60, 65 construction, design, build, install work. The rest of that is maintenance. So holiday lighting, maintenance, fertilization. Yeah, that's probably in that 45% range now. The problem with construction is you go sell a couple of big projects. It's easy to get your numbers up. It also sucks you in. And you're also pumping a lot of material and things like that through it. It's a lot slower to grow a maintenance business. I mean, it's slow and steady. You're not going to, it's hard to go out and go sell $1 million worth of maintenance in one spring by yourself, right? With a salesperson. It's a lot of work. The other thing that people get wrong about maintenance, they think it's not sexy because it doesn't have as big of numbers when you're talking to people about construction. But the thing you have to remind people about maintenance, even like our own salespeople, if you go sell, call it $1 million in maintenance in one season, and your average lifetime value of that client, let's say that they're average with you with 4.5 years, 5 years, 7 years. If you go sell that $1 million, if they're a client on average 5 years, that's $5 million of the work you just sold. I mean, it's spread out over 5 years, but that was a $5 million sale collectively. And so you be consistent, you gain a lot of momentum, and you have to remind people that, these customers come back. This is recurring revenue. This isn't just one and done and you have to go chase it again. The hard part with construction is you start at zero every year. That goes away. You're working yourself out of a job as fast as you can because you want to be efficient, which means you've got to backfill that. So we watch our pipeline, and I mean, that's our oxygen. If that pipeline's dry, you have nothing to go do. So we manage our pipeline like crazy. We call that our oxygen. We say, how far out are we? We look at our schedule and we look at our crew production. We are always looking at what that buffer is because you never want to have downtime, especially in the business. You start the year with however many days you actually have that are workable in a year. You take all the holidays out, take all the rain days out, take all the sick days out. And then the days you can't because of snow, rain, ice, frozen ground, you end up with a pretty small window of time that you can actually show up and operate. And that's kind of where our equipment philosophy came from a little bit. We don't buy any used equipment ever. When we first started, we did, because that's what we could afford. And that's what we could do. But we do not buy anything used ever. We go to auctions. I might be getting off in the weeds here,
You're good.
We want to be consistent. So if I have a guy on a crew and he has to go with another crew that day because someone's sick or someone's out and he has to drive a different Mini X, I don't want it to be a Kubota one day and a Bobcat the next day and a Caterpillar the day after that. That's absolutely insane. I want them to go get in a 304, and then if they have to go run a 304 on another crew, it's the exact same machine, exact same controls. They're back at home, right? They know what they're doing. Same thing with the trucks, same thing with the trailers. On the maintenance side, I can't stand pulling trailers. It's just another 20 feet of liability you're pulling around with you. So we do our best to eliminate trailers. If I could have 0 trailers, I would, which is why we use the vans for snow removal, because I don't want people pulling trailers around doing sidewalk snow removal. But everything's consistent. Going back to the new thing and, days to service, snow and ice, when you need to go de-ice a parking lot and it's 3 a.m, you better start, right? There's not a whole lot of times you can just not show up or be late before you get fired. So everything has to be, has to be clean, has to be working. And you only have such a short window in so many days. You've got to be able to show up and do what you're supposed to and maximize that. And people always look at equipment. Here's what's funny. People look at equipment pricing and they think that that is the most expensive thing they're going to spend their money on. They will throw labor at something, not realizing that labor in any business is your biggest line item on a P&L. And people manage labor so poorly. We're kind of slow today, or the shop's dirty. We're just going to have the crew sweep and clean the shop today. It's literally your product on the shelf, right? At Costco. You're selling billable time and your job is to maximize that. And when you don't do that, you run into a ton of problems. So on a P&L, let's call it in a construction business, 10% of our expense is equipment. So you pay someone, you would never pay someone this now, but you hire someone for $10 an hour, add in 21% for labor burden and a little bit of overtime. They cost you twice as much money as a payment on a brand new, call it a 259 or 279 cat skid steer. And so people get I'm not saying go waste a bunch of money on equipment you don't need, but if you need the equipment and you can use it and you're busy, go replace labor with equipment. Hire better people to run equipment smarter, run a smaller crew, and just at it. But people always look at that price on equipment. They're like, well, I can buy this at an auction. I save $10,000 or $5,000. Well, what does a crew being down for you for one day cost you, right? So on a construction crew, call it $3,000 to $6,000, depending on what size that crew is, right? If you're down for 2 days and you can't do something. And the other thing people will always say is, we have things to do until we have that equipment, right? We'll stay busy and then we'll pick up the skid steer from that other crew. You have to float a piece of equipment more than 3 or 4 times a month. It's cheaper to just buy another piece of equipment. So if you think about it, you have a crew, let's call it a 3-man crew. I'm passionate about this. This stuff drives me insane. Let's say you have a 3-man crew, and I know this part doesn't pertain to pest control, but kind of pertains to all of it. Let's say you have a 3-man crew on a project somewhere, and another crew needs a skid steer. So that crew leader is going to be your driver. He's going to load the skid steer up. He's going to put it on a trailer, chain it down, hopefully with 2 chains, drive it across town, stop and get a drink somewhere, stop and use a restroom. He's going to go drop it off. But what does everybody on that crew do as soon as the foreman leaves? They'll start sitting around, standing around, or they don't know what to do, right? Take a break. You go drive that skid steer across town, drop it off. He chats with the other foreman that's his buddy, drives back. You murder 2 to 3 hours when you have to do that and become so unproductive. So you send your most expensive guy. You almost shut the crew down while he's gone. He's out now being a delivery driver. And that probably costs you $200 to $300. If you're doing that 4 times a year, instead of just having enough equipment that every crew has that piece of equipment, a skid steer for every crew or a mini X for every crew. So they're not moving stuff around. But if you have to float it 4 times a month, you may as well have another piece of equipment. And if it's not busy for one day, it's a backup. It's actually cheaper. And going back to buying new equipment, you're working on the top end of your money instead of the bottom end. Instead of paying for repairs and downtime, you're paying a premium to have a newer, nicer piece of equipment. But I'm always going to bet that I'm busy, and I'm going to assume that I'm going to use that if I bought it, and not always, play defense with it. So that's our philosophy on equipment and efficiency. And, people get so hung up on equipment, and they look at that price and cost savings and price shopping dealers and whatever piece of equipment you're using. Look at who your servicing dealer is. You can save some money on something, but if you're nearest 3 states away and you have to wait for parts when something happens, fantastic. You made a really bad decision,
For sure.
So those are things that if you're in business and you're serious about it and it's not a hobby, take a good hard look at the way that you plan purchases, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I have some questions out of all that. I was taking notes here. When you,
Uh,
cause I heard you talk about software a little bit and talk about Lawn Buddies. When you
mhm.
switch softwares, did you switch Lawn Buddies as well? Or did you keep running the same software
We
you were
did.
using? You did?
So we were using Service Autopilot and Lawn Buddies. We had talked about doing a purchase off and on for several years. And we had me and the previous owner, we were friends. We still talk today. We'd had several conversations, and they actually got onto Service Autopilot a couple of years before we did the deal, with the idea being it would sure be nice that if these guys were off of paper and they were organized and they had their routes down and they knew the software. So if something ever happened or when the deal happened, they're already up to speed on it, right? This isn't like a culture shock for them.
Yep.
So that was one of the benefits, is they were already using the same software, and reporting wise, cleaning up the AR when the deal happened, all that kind of stuff. It just made it way easier. And their guys were already bought into using software and using their phone or using a tablet. So yeah, we sort of kind of ran onto it in 2 years prior.
Now, is Lawn Buddies still on Service Autopilot, or did you switch it again?
They're not. We switched to Aspire. We went live this spring. Man, and there's pros and cons to everything. And I would argue that at different sizes and different business complexities, at the end of the day, people spend way too much time thinking about and trying to get software to do so many things that they want it to do. I would argue that 95% of the time it's things that just don't matter. And when people are looking for software, they get so hung up on, this software has this feature. And so, my next software has to have this. Not always the case, but we switched everything over to Aspire. Really, the reason behind that was the construction side. We were trying to bring everything into one system. We were using multiple accounts before. And if I was running a business that was just singular software or a singular service, pest control, lawn care, whatever, and you just did that, I would probably be running Service Autopilot all day long. We just needed something that could handle more complexity because of our heavy construction side that's still growing. And we wanted something more rigid. The bigger we got, we wanted something that would force us to follow a process instead of having too many ways to manipulate it. The other issue I had was, we have several employees that have been with us a long time, and there's just a lot of people that had a lot of access to it. And when you are operating in a bigger organization, you don't want everybody to have access to everything all the time. You kind of want everyone in their lane. You want them to be as efficient, and you want them to have everything that they need to do their job and all the data they need to do their job. But they don't need to have all the data for everybody else's job, because all it does is slow them down, right? It doesn't make them efficient. You just want them to have what they need when they need it, and that's it. And so that was the big reason for the change, was just the complexity of some of the stuff we were doing, branches, invoice templates, things like that.
Yeah, because you and I had talked about that, about the invoice templates you were struggling with. You couldn't put multiple invoice is in one system, so you had to have a system for each one.
What we wanted to be able to do was map the revenue on the back end, and we wanted to be able, if someone was a Lawn Buddies customer, here's the real reason: we're running two brands in one market, and if someone is a Lawn Buddies customer, I don't want them getting an Outback invoice. If somebody is an Outback customer, Lawn Buddies still goes and services the lawns. It's on the back of our flag, and this is kind of unique too. I forget the verbiage now. It says it's not this powered by Outback or something. It's not that, but something by Outback. So the Outback logo is on the back of our really small. We use really big yard signs for Lawn Buddies so people don't miss them, and they're great for marketing, great for advertising. So when someone signs up for service, we just tell them Lawn Buddies is our chemical division. That's us. And people are like, okay, great. They don't really care.
Yep.
But I don't want them getting an Outback invoice if they're a full service customer and then getting a Lawn Buddies invoice. It's just not clean. I want everything as clean and simple as possible. Like you look at our website, our trucks, our branding, everything is very clean. It's modern. And we try and carry that all the way through the process of everything we do. So that way they're getting the correct invoice template and there's no confusion and less phone calls. So there's some more flexibility that way for sure.
Yeah, cool. Next question I brought up is the book next to you. Where you're talking about having everything exactly the same, like all the equipment's the same, mowers are the same, everything's the same. You've been doing this for a long time, but your reading looks like it's scaling up, if I can read it correctly.
Yep.
It's hard to see, but I thought that's what it was. And is that where it came from, or?
Scaling up.
Yep. It's a great book.
I've read it, once or twice or listened to it. I wanted to dive back into it. I was on their website, printing off their workbooks and PDFs, just because we've been thinking a lot about org charts, company structure. When you grow a lot, that org chart looks totally different from year to year sometimes. So starting planning for the winter, things like that. But yeah, I remember it's a good book. I want to do it again. So
you guys don't run EOS?
We don't run EOS. There's a couple of reasons why.
Yeah, I was figuring.
Part of it is working through that org chart.
Yeah.
So I'm not ready to commit to it yet.
Yeah, and I figured you weren't doing EOS because you're going to try scaling up, which I think is a great option.
We're thinking about it. I don't have a ton of experience with scaling up other than what people have told me in reading the book or listening to the audiobook. But I've heard really good things about it. I had another good friend that was talking about it the other day. So I'm going to dive back into it and look at it. In any of your companies, do you run any of them? Do you run EOS?
No, we don't run EOS. So our biggest thing is we couldn't find a local implementer. So we run EOS, but we didn't hire it out because we couldn't get anyone up here to actually to facilitate and show us. So we just ran it by ourselves. We still do it to this day.
That's good.
But we never had someone come in and actually paid them to do it because there was no one around here.
Yeah.
We live in BFE. It's kind of hard.
Do what you can do. There's probably a ton of benefits to having a facilitator, or an implementer, but yeah, it costs money too. You got to commit to it. So if you're going to get on your own, that's good because hard to have that structure on your own.
Yeah, we're actually going to our first offsite of the year next week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, our yearly offsite. Yep. So we're going to go do that.
Nice.
So because you learned a lot of this stuff from your dad and stuff like that, but when did you finally decide that it was time to start learning from someone else? I mean, I know you're in a lot of coaching groups, but what made you decide to go in the first one?
That's a good question. I'll tell you the truth. So I graduated in 2005, started building the business. And if anyone remembers 2005 to 2007, you could finance anything you wanted. It did not matter. I bought my first cat skid steer at 18 years old. The year I was still in high school when I bought it. I bought a brand new skid steer when I was in high school. I bought a dump trailer. I bought a couple of Duramaxes. Didn't really have the work for it. We were out trying to backfill it. And I was like, this will be sweet. If we buy the trailer, we'll definitely have work. It doesn't really work that way. It's not like you build it, they will come. You have to go sell the work first.
Yeah. It's not dominoes.
So I did it kind of backwards, but everything was busy. We were growing. And then we were a much smaller business then, but 2008 happened. And I remember sitting there at the end of the year and I had lost $88,000 working all year. And we were literally bidding to just turn dollars because there was no work out there that was profitable. And the work that you could get was priced so cheap, you couldn't make any money on it. And I was like, man, there is no way I'm going to work this hard and lose money. If I'm going to lose money, I'm going to sit at home and do something different, but I'm not going to work this hard and not make money. So I was referred to Jim Houston by a good friend, Jim Webb, who had a landscape company in Jackson Hole. and he had been working with Jim for several years. And so Jim came in and we sat down, did a budget, went through the P&L. I remember the first day I met Jim, we pulled up my P&L and I'm like, this is what happened last year, Jim. And he goes, huh, what happened? But he laughed at me. So, man, we just tore through everything. I was like, I want to figure this out and I want to figure out the right way to do it. But I'm not going to work this hard and not make any money in this business. Because you, me, everyone else, all of our friends, we all work way too hard for what we make. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, lawn care, pest control, landscaping, it's all a lot of work. And people don't realize what we put up with and the things that we see and hear. And if you were to talk to one of your clients and tell them the things that come across your desk some days, if they're not self-employed, it would blow their mind. That those happen on a regular basis in the real world. So it's just funny. But so I got fanatical about knowing my numbers and knowing exactly where I needed to be priced. One, it gives you the confidence when someone says, oh, your price is too high. Too high compared to what? Too high compared to the price that someone made up down the street that doesn't know their numbers. That's what I'm competing against. The guy that drove by the house and was like, it looks like a $50 lawn.
Right.
Where we compare to? There's no data behind any of that. And so I wanted to be able to say, if someone said my price is too high, I want to be able to say, no problem. That's fine. Hire someone else. And I want to go do a different job and fill my time with something that I can actually make some sort of margin on. Right. So we got fanatical about knowing our numbers, knowing what our pricing should be. So we build 2 budgets a year. We build a budget in the spring. We build a budget in the fall. We've already got a budget built for next year. And in the fall, we'll do revisions, as you get through that first, second, third quarter, look at, we like to look at comparisons, where we've been, where we're going, and make adjustments, right? That way you're not making big purchases, things like that, if you're off track somewhere. So I started working with Jim, and man, me and Jim work together probably 2 or 3 times a year, every year since. Jim's probably been in my office 45 times. And so that was probably the first time I started working with someone else. And I was like, man, you can learn a lot from other people. Like, there's a lot of other people that have already figured this out. And it's really not that hard. You just have to go find the people that have already done it, right? And you know this. And then once you see what that looks like in real life, like someone who actually knows what they're doing, someone who has good advice, and someone who has good motives, and you see what that looks like, and then what you can go do with that advice, you can figure out how to go find those other people really quick once you've done it once. So I remember I was a GIE one year, and the big thing I was trying to figure out was how to do job costing in QuickBooks on construction projects, how to allocate everything by division, make sure everything was clean. And I went to a seminar Jason Cupp was teaching, and I think this was 2014 or 2015, maybe earlier, maybe 13. Anyway, Jason Cupp was doing a session at GIE, and I sat in on that and listened to it. And he was talking exactly about that, how to separate everything so you can figure out what your COGS number was, what your cost of goods sold is, what it actually takes to go produce the job, where that should be, what that should look like. I remember listening to him and I was like, man, this guy gets it. He totally understands, like, he knows what this looks like. And so once you see that once, you can go find other people who, replicate that. So Jason Cupp, Jonathan Potoshnik, people who are looking at things differently than you are. So, and you've got to go find someone outside your bubble, outside your state. We've been in a peer group together for several years. Man, all of my best friends don't live in Idaho. Like, all of my best friends live all across the country, right? Because you've got to get outside of where you're at to find enough people to put around you. That you've got to go farther, right? You got to go find people in other places, because if you want to build a big business, if you want to do things, you've got to go find people who live in that world, right? I have a really hard time. I'm saying I don't have friends here, but it's really hard to go and talk to someone who doesn't have the same experience as you do. They're not doing the same thing that you are every day. Their world looks totally different if they, go punch a time card somewhere and get off at 5 every day and they have this perfectly structured life, right? Like, I don't live in that world. You don't live in that world. None of my best friends live in that world. Every single day is different. Everything is always changing. And you want to go be around other people who are like that, because you can relate to them, right? So all of my best friends I've met in, honestly, peer groups. They're business owners. And the commonality is it's continuous improvement. They want to do better tomorrow than they did today. They want their business to be better. And, whatever happened yesterday, you fix it and you just don't make that mistake again, right? And as long as you're smart enough to not make the same mistake twice, generally, you'll do okay in business. Like, if you do something and you look at it and go, well, that was dumb. And as long as you just don't do that thing again, you'll be fine.
I love that.
Do it 5 or 6 times, you're on your own. Probably shouldn't be in business. But if you can learn from those mistakes and don't do it again, that's honestly the biggest key. And so I started spending, going back to your question, I started spending a lot of money on consultants. I started spending a lot of money on conferences, going and finding those people who had been there, done it, knew more than me. And sometimes you just don't know what you don't know until you hear it, right? And then it clicks. And so I started spending a lot of money on that. And the other biggest thing that helped me, one, I'd never worked for anyone else before, right? It's not like I worked for a landscape company for 20 years, then went and started my own business. So for me, the operations side of, I know what looks good. I know how to sell it. I know how to price it. How do I go get all that done efficiently? And what does that look like? So for me, going and seeing other landscapers' facilities. So going on site visits, like, how do you organize your shop? What does this look like? What does your org chart look like? How many guys are they in charge of? How many direct reports they have? And so for me, where I got all the traction was when I could go out and see that in person and go see that in action at someone's facility. Go see their morning rollout. That stuff for me was like a game changer. That was eye-opening. And I started doing that in, probably 2011, 2012. And I've loved that ever since. I mean, I've probably been to 150 facilities at this point. And it's hard. It's hard to leave your business and travel that much. But I was in 2 peer groups simultaneously at the same time for 4 years. And so I was gone just on those trips every month, probably for almost a week. I mean, so I was traveling, once a month, no matter what, almost all year long for 4 years, just in those groups, just to, take care of those commitments. So it's a ton of travel. But if you're going to do something like that, you have to commit to the travel and you have to commit to going and seeing what that looks like in other markets and other facilities and meeting other people. So you have to commit to, if you want to build something big, you got to commit to thinking outside the box and seeing what other people have done, for sure.
Let's be honest. You can get there pretty easy to all these places. So you got that on us. I have a question. Who has made the biggest impact on Chase's life?
Oh, man. A lot of people. Yeah. Probably my dad first.
Yep. I knew that was coming.
Yeah. That's where I learned how to work, right?
Yeah.
That's where I learned, like, get up, show up, go to work.
Same.
90% of this is just showing up, right? Because most people don't do that.
Yep.
Most people don't show up. They just quit. And if people realized how close they were to what they wanted, way less people would quit.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't know. It could be a month away. It could be a week away. It could be a day away, but they quit too early. It's hard.
So I was
not
like
easy.
That. And then both of my parents are great. Before I had a driver's license, my mom used to drive me around and hang out while I would mow lawns. Like, I couldn't drive there. I had a mowing route I couldn't drive to when I first started, and my mom would take me to go do it. I went to scout camp, and my mom went and mowed my lawns for me that week so I could go to scout camp. So like, it's not fair to say just my dad. My mom did my books for a long time, which was fantastic. She still dabbles in it sometimes, but yeah. So both of my parents would be the first ones, for sure.
I love that. If you could go back and change one thing from day one with the business, what would that be?
Change one thing, move faster. You always think you're moving fast until you see something that someone else is doing and you're like, yeah, I'm not moving fast at all. They are moving 5 times faster than I am.
Yeah.
I would say move faster. I felt like we have moved fast. But then I go see some of my friends and some of the things they're doing, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm not moving that fast.
That's one of the things Jonathan's first told me. He's like, think bigger. Always think bigger.
It is so easy to get trapped in your own head. Okay, the first thing is, and I'll preface this, I'm not the smartest person in the world, and I have not figured everything out. These are the things that I have learned the hard way over the last 20 years, right? Doing the same thing. You just have to show up. Most people quit too early. And what was my second one? Man, I had a good one. Showing up and then going faster. I already said that, but show up, be consistent, and then just move faster. Everyone moves too slow all the time.
That's awesome.
And that's something I tell myself every morning when I get up. One of the first things I think about is just go faster. You always think you're giving it your all, and you never are, to be honest. You're just not making time, right? So I would have just moved way faster. Had I done a few of those things differently, I would probably have a lot bigger business than I have now too. Still. But yeah.
What are you most proud of?
Oh man. We're deep here.
Putting you on the spot, my friend.
I am the most proud of.
We don't always get to think this way. And sometimes we forget to.
That's why it's hard. Here's what I'm most proud of. When things get hard and I need to figure something out, I always find a way to figure it out, to take care of it. There is nothing in life that you can't fix. Everything's fixable. Even if you make a mistake, we all make mistakes. We all make dumb choices every single day. You can fix everything, right? So that goes back to learning from your mistakes and just not doing the same thing twice. But I've never not shown up, I don't think. I'm sure there are other people who would maybe say that that's not true.
I'll text her quick.
Probably, but I would say that if something gets hard, I don't just not do it.
Yeah.
You just do it. Well, one, because you're in business and you don't have a choice, right? Someone who's never had to figure out how to make a payroll or how to make payroll doesn't get it. They just don't.
I remember back when I first started, maybe a year or two in, after having my first 2 employees, like bank would call and be like, hey, Jonas, payroll hit and there's not enough money in the bank. Yeah. And I'd be running back home drive as fast as I could, open up the mailbox, like, thank God there's checks in here, and go deposit them in the checking account. Like, it's not easy.
Nothing will make you figure something out quicker than waking up and going, I need $100,000 today. Buy 5. All right.
That's tough.
And then you just go to work and you do it and you figure it out, right?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
We haven't touched on this at all, but if we have time, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the lawn phone thing. Like, how did that come into place? Like, what does that look like? I know a lot of people in the industry don't have a phone system and they're always looking for them. And I thought it'd be a good way to plug that in here and just kind of tell us about it.
Yeah. I remember, like, real quick, going back to the getting out of the truck thing and scaling. One of my biggest hangups was being accessible to customers. And if I could go back in time, I would have figured that out way quicker. So one of my hangups was everybody had my phone number. There were days I'd have 200 phone calls on my cell phone, which is absolutely insane. And pretty much almost all of them could have been handled by the office or someone else that was trained. And my biggest hangup was, how do I get all this work done and sell and have all these client meetings and then return all these phone calls and get back to people? And they're upset because you took too long to get back to them. And so going back to that, we built the new building and moved in, and we did our own phone system. David, our IT guy, and we did our own PBX system. We helped a couple of other friends do it. At one point, we had like 7 people on our phone server, and it had been a year, and we were like, we should probably charge these people for this. We're spending a lot of time on this now. And so we helped some friends do it. And what we wanted to do was, once we kind of got serious about it, I still call it a hobby. It's not, but once we kind of got serious about it, we said, all right, we want to help people in the lawn and landscape business. One, because that's from, and we understand what they're looking for, what their struggles are, and the office structure, right? This is what this person needs. These are the features they need. These are the things that would solve a lot of problems. So we wanted to just solve those problems for people initially in the lawn and landscape business, pest control, of giving them those tools and those features to make their life simple, easier, and taking all the guesswork out. So obviously this varies by state, but we record all of our calls, inbound and outbound, everything. We don't record credit card numbers. There's ways you can do that, ways you can scrub that out. You know, you don't, to be PCI compliant, you don't want to keep credit card numbers recorded at all if someone's giving you a card number. But we record everything. Client calls in and says, hey, your guy promised this. He's going to be there on this day. We say, hey, no problem. We'll go listen to the phone call. It's amazing how 80% of your problems go away when you mention that. Not saying anyone would ever do anything terrible, but there were several times. Here's a good example. I'll call these ones out. I had a developer who was in a different market that owned property here in Idaho Falls. And they called our office and said, there's 2 feet of snow on our roof. We just had a bunch of snowfall, and they're all flat roofs. They're all membrane roofs. We can't get anyone to go clear the snow. We're afraid they're going to collapse if they stay this way, and there's more snow in the forecast. Can you please come get these done? Well, when you're doing that, you have to have insurance for roof coverage. If you do snow removal and you go get on someone's roof and you damage their membrane roof, and then it starts leaking inside their building, your carrier won't cover you. That's a roofing code, right? So you got to be really careful about things you get yourself into. And I've always been really good about not getting myself into something that I can't get back out of. So we had a discussion on the phone. This was years ago. This was really bad on my part. And I said, all of our guys are on overtime. We're all plowing snow. Yes, we're insured for it. Yes, we do roofs, but we literally don't have time for this. There is no way. And they had 3 buildings. They said, no, it's got to get done. And I said, it's $85 a man hour. One, when you have that roofing code, your insurance is way more expensive. You have to be covered. They want to be covered, you would think. And everything had to get carried up 3-4 stories to a rooftop. We had a man lift there to move equipment. This is an expensive operation. $85 an hour. Great. Just get it done. Send us a bill. I said, we'll do it hourly. We'll be as efficient as we can. So we went and did it, sent them a bill. This was probably a $33,000 bill between 3 different buildings. And we didn't sign a contract. There was no communication about $85 per man hour or anything. You know what they came back and said? They said, you said it would be $85 an hour. It was your choice to put 17 guys over there and clear all those buildings in 2 days. We didn't care how long it took. You just told us $85 an hour. So at the very most, $85 an hour, times 24 hours in a day is $2,000. Took you 3 days. We'll give you $6,000. We had 17 people over there hustling, trying to help them as fast as we could on a weekend, and got my attorney involved, ended up settling, got some of the money. But like to this day, I still cannot believe there's people out there everywhere like this, right? Still can't believe it to this day. That was even a thing. And so you talk about people, hearing stories and seeing things that happen. We spent more money just on labor paying people than we even got out of them. So it's crazy. So that was a tangent, but that goes back to the lawn phone thing of, people get taken advantage of all the time. Let's give everyone all the tools that they need to go run a really good business, right? So there's just features that, make their life better, make it simpler. And so we want to help people. We offer a really inexpensive starter package, which is basically, hey, if you're running your business from your cell phone and you're just getting someone into the office and it's your first line, we offer a super discounted starter package that is, an office phone number. We can port your number. We can move your cell phone number to the office number, get you a new number. So we want to help people who are making that transition from, okay, I'm growing from $200,000 a year. I'm hiring more employees. I'm more crews. I need to get out of the field. I need to get some help in the office. So that's why we offer that super low intro price, because we're just trying to help them get moving in the right direction, structure wise for their business. So we offer that. And then, we can run everything up to call centers. We have a soft phone app people can use. We can port numbers. We can do all sorts of stuff. Reporting, auto reporting. If you want to know which extension, you have a bigger office. If you want to know who's not answering the phone but pretending like they're busy all the time, you'll see that. You'll see how many calls that extension didn't answer, that they were signed in, right? How many dropped calls they had, how many minutes are on the phone, all sorts of stuff. So as you get bigger, all those things become very important, especially like in pest control, lawn care. Those are high touch businesses, right? And I don't know exactly the structure of yours, but you spend a lot of time on the phone because the ticket, it's a volume game. So there's just a lot of communication that has to happen. And you want to have uptime. You want to make sure that your server, if something happens, you want something as a backup. Because just like bad equipment, same thing in the office. You want to be up all the time. You don't want to be missing phone calls. Those people aren't calling back typically, especially if they're a new customer, if you don't answer the phone.
Yeah.
So that's the really long story about how we got into lawn phone and started ramping that up. It's actually a really fun business. I enjoy it a lot. I'm going to start spending a lot more time in it than I have been. But that's kind of where lawn phone came from. People think it's kind of a funny name, but sure easy to remember. So
it sure is. And we've used it for years. So, and I know we love it. So we appreciate it. So if someone wanted to sign up with you guys, where would they find you guys at?
Just lawnphone.com. They could sign up there. They can put a card on file there. Actually, if they go through the process and set up the phone, it actually spins up a phone server for them already. We've got a workflow on the back end. So the amount of work it takes to get someone live and going, if they're porting an existing number, it takes the longest amount of time. That's something that's not really in our control. Someone's using a new number, we can have someone up within an hour. So
yeah, we just ported from our new office back to our other office. We just ported a number and it only took, I don't know, a day or two. It wasn't long at all.
Nice.
Yeah, it went really smooth. So that way we just have a backup from one office to the next, Another thing that I like about it too is if you don't have like an auto dialer or something and you want to track your sales guys, like how many calls they're making out from the extension, they can track that as well. We use that. Yep. We use that report a lot.
Yeah, you see how hard they're really hustling.
Yeah, for sure. So I got one last question for you. You've dropped a lot of nuggets here and a lot of bombs on us, but if you're just starting out, talking to a 19, 20-year-old kid, what would you tell that kid?
Go figure out your numbers. Go figure out what you should price. Don't go work your butt off for free for everybody.
Yep, I love it. I agree with you 100%. Yep, got to know your numbers. Yep. Otherwise, you're working yourself away for 3, 4, 5 years. Next thing you know, you lost $88,000.
you don't get time back and you don't get that missed revenue. Yeah, just don't do it for free. We all work too hard.
Cool, man. Well, we've been on here a minute, so I don't want to keep you all day. I know you're busy.
No, you're great. I'm happy to. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it, man. You've been a good friend for a long time. So
yeah, appreciate it too. And sounds like I'll be seeing you soon.
I will see you soon.
All right,
January.
buddy. Thanks for being here.
Hey, no problem. Thank you.
See you.
See you, man.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pest Control Millionaire. If you are not already subscribed, we would really like if you did that. And please leave us a glowing review on iTunes. For the first 8 weeks that we have this show launched, we are going to give away a $50 Amazon gift card every week to a random person who gives us a nice review on iTunes. That's how important it is to us. Also, we want you to be involved with the show. Please send any questions you have about entrepreneurship, how to grow your business, anything about the service industry to info@pestcontrolmillionaire.com. We will answer them on the show. We have the best guests in the service industry, so why not get their take on your problems? Thanks for listening again, and we'll see you in the next one.